Hello, this is Taha.
This is Anainah,
This is Movie Masala.
and we're here to yap at you about films we watched recently.
And today we're doing Coyote versus Acme.
And Tony.
Okay, I'm going to start off with Coyote versus Acme, directed by Dave Green.
Just goes out, so you walk over to inspect it, and of course, then it decides to explode, and your whole entire body is instantly turned to ash and drops to the ground, except your eyeballs, which hover in midair, blinking and looking around sadly before also falling to the ground? That can hurt, and you may be entitled to compensation.
Call the law office of Avery Jones and Maltese.
This was one of my most anticipated films of this year, right? Because of everything that had led up to this film, right? This film was fully completed and shelved by Warner Brothers for a tax write-off.
Oh my god. Okay.
Yeah, it was this and Batgirl, which were completed films that were just shelved because they did not want to release this because they thought it would not make money. And they'd rather than taking the loss, they'd rather just not release it and at least get a loss on their balance sheet and like get a tax write-off basically for it. Which
Oh my
sucks.
god. So business was involved in the release of this film? Ew.
Yeah, exactly. And when I tell you about the plot, it kind of feels like I'm assuming, obviously, look, this film was shelved purely for tax write-off and not what the plot of this film was. But if you learn about the plot of this film, it does feel like,
Okay, go on. I'm intrigued.
Yeah, firstly, before that, I just want to really emphasize this film was in this unreleased purgatory, right? Because it was shelved by Warner Brothers. Then it was really pushed because a lot of people were like, "Oh, this was very good. It had John Cena. It had Forte." I remember, and I once did an interview for Warner Brothers, to be part of some internship role fresh out of university. This was 2023.
Yes.
They asked me which films in Warner Brothers film. I talked about this film in 2023 because it was going to be released the next year.
No wonder you didn't get the job. They were like, this kid doesn't even know what's coming for him.
Yeah. And that means 2024. It's 2026 now. Because I was like, oh, Will Forte, it's a Looney Tunes movie. It's a courtroom drama starring Wile E. Coyote. That's so incredible. It's so fun. It's about the Acme Corporation, which is this background corporation which has all of the weird, wacky gadgets. That looks so fun. Did not get released. Shelved. Okay, probably David Zayas, okay, this film's never going to come out. Very upsetting, genuinely. And then there was a continuous campaign to get this film released. And eventually, this was bought by a company called Ketchup Entertainment, who released this film.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just need a second. Okay, continue.
Yeah, it was released by Ketchup Entertainment, who basically was the distributor for this film. It was still obviously produced by Warner Brothers, right?
Of course, yes.
And then a lot of Ketchup Entertainment's marketing for this film was kind of a dig at Warner Brothers didn't want this film to get released, right? Ketchup Entertainment, just for the background gag, they're not a very big thing. This is probably one of the biggest films they've released alongside another Looney Tunes movie earlier this year. And then Hellboy and a few other smaller films. They also did help release Ferrari, the one with Adam Driver.
Okay.
But yeah, Ketchup Entertainment rescued this film. Now, when I say what this film is about, this film is basically a legal drama, as I mentioned before, with Wile E. Coyote alongside Will Forte sue the Acme Corporation, which is this big evil mega corporation that basically produces everything, for their products misfiring and not working properly, and them being a monopoly. Not really suing them for a monopoly, but basically for continuously hurting Wile E. Coyote's character by genuinely misleading them. And it basically is Acme, a evil corporation that is making sure not just the lawyers, but the government and the legal system is also on their side, so no one can really harm them. Why do you think this film didn't get released?
Doesn't sound too unfamiliar to how the world is right now.
Yeah, it's surprising that this film was shelved when a big mega company like Warner Brothers, a big massive corporation, was merging with another big massive corporation, Paramount, also very evil. And in the middle of their let's shelve this legal drama about evil big corporations.
Yeah, there's a certain element of irony there that's too meta for anyone to fully understand.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the whole thing. And I'm so happy this film got released. I genuinely am, because I genuinely feel I'll get to the plot and everything and how it executes it. But firstly, I really want to acknowledge I feel this film is full of love for these characters and an understanding of these characters. And the moment I was like, oh no, they love this, is not just because of the setup, which is Acme and using that, which feels like someone who's watched these animations, cartoons like me growing up, and was like, wouldn't it be fun to talk about this little bag thing and like expand on like this whole world building? But also that when there's this flashback where Wiley Coyote is first time hearing like this legal ad coming off, have you been harmed by a falling piano on your head? Have you been harmed by a catapult that launched you directly onto the road? And you're getting flashbacks of the original animations playing. Like as in generally from the vault, kind of just, and I was like, oh, you watch these and you're like, this would be, it feels like you're directly referencing something with like a love and admiration, and then telling your own story from it.
Right. Yeah. In a way, it is nostalgic, but in a genuinely good way, not in like a they're mining nostalgia for like good views.
Exactly. It's not a Space Jam 2, which like, oh my god, just hurt my very soul, because they're like, let's just throw Rick and Morty here. It'll be funny without him having any relevance to the plot. No, it feels like this is directly tied to the all of those things. It's using only the imagery which makes sense in context to this film. It's just not referring to anything else. And also, like, I don't know how much part James Gunn had to play with this, but he's one of the credited story writers and a producer for this film.
Okay.
He does work for Warner Brothers now, so I think that makes sense. But James Gunn, who's also made Scooby-Doo movies, I genuinely think probably had a hand in this. I have no knowledge of this. I've not done that background research, but I just hope he had, because it makes sense for someone like him to take like small background characters and work with them.
Yeah, definitely. It kind of also feels like the new Spider-Man movie, where they did that whole sequence with the comic book covers. It's like there's meaning behind it, and there was some dude who was just sitting, waiting at the back, like, ha, now's my turn.
Yeah, it's also like, hey, this is for you. I'm doing this because I love this the same amount of you, and I'm doing it in a way that's meaningful.
Yeah.
It's been 7 minutes. I've not even talked about what this film. And like another thing where I'm like, oh, I really love this film is it is very anti-capitalist, very meaningfully so. And you can not just tell by the plot, which I do think is very much like Foghorn Leghorn is this big company head and they're trying to hide. I'm not going to spoil it for people, but like their secrets abound and like they're clearly evil. And like there's two jokes that I think you'll really appreciate. Early on, John Cena, who's Acme's like head lawyer, whose name is Buddy Crane.
Okay.
He works for Foghorn Leghorn. And one of his associates is Bill Peliconis. This is a very bird-themed legal team, which is very fun to me. It's such a like low.
Okay, Bill Peliconis, sure.
So John Cena's character goes like, of course, don't worry. The law is on our side. We wrote it.
Yeah, okay.
Which is a great dig at corporations and lobbying, right? And then also when John Cena goes to Foghorn Leghorn, when he comes back and is like, hey, how was Bora Bora? And Foghorn Leghorn goes like, a tax haven so nice they named it twice.
Yeah.
And that's a joke that only an adult in the audience gets. It's not something a child gets.
No. But I think that's kind of on brand with the whole Looney Tunes like franchise as well. It's like very clearly there are meant to be jokes for adults. It is meant for adults.
Oh, 1,000%. If you watch those original cartoons, like I am very sad that they don't have the contemporary relevance that they should have, genuinely, the Looney Tunes. Because there's so much, not just academic value, and I mean that very genuinely. Like Bugs Bunny is probably one of the earliest examples we have as a character doing drag in like media, right? And like it being widely accepted. But also like they're genuinely very smart. They have a lot of jokes and everything that most people will not get. There's like one episode which is just basically a parody of like Casablanca, which is something no child would have watched.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it's fun. So there's just so much love. And also like another love is like Will Forte's character, who's this lawyer. His name is Kevin Avery. And Avery is clearly a nod to Tex Avery, who was a brilliant cartoonist who worked on a lot of like Merry Melodies, Looney Tunes, a lot of like early screwball classics. Like he worked on Tom and Jerry. He worked on like the Droopy the dog as well. Like basically a very influential early American animator, director, and voice actor. Right? So it's also just paying its homages really front and center, right?
Yeah.
One thing I will though say that does bother me about this film, and I wish wasn't the case, which is the animation. Not that the animation is bad. I think it's very fun. It's very plasticky. there's a word we use for early animation like this, which is rubber hosey. Merry Melodies isn't as rubber hose as you go further back into the 30s, where the characters' arms are just wibbly wobbly like pipe hoses, basically.
Yeah.
But it's still very rubber hosey, stretchy, cartoony. I do think though the Looney Tunes characters just don't work in a 3D model and animated sense as well as they do in 2D. That's just my case. It is obviously so much less time consuming to do it in a 3D model sense. So when you're interacting with the real world, it is just so much easier to do every single thing moving forward from that.
Yeah.
But it's just not the same. It is just not the same. There is just something that's missing when you do it in a 3D model sense instead of the hand-drawn 2D animation sense. I'm not upset at it. It would just have really pushed this film to the next level for me.
Fair, yeah.
Again, I don't know if I've really sold you on the film's plot at all.
No,
but it is still...
I think the idea of like Coyote like taking on this big corporation, I think that's just enough to sell it for me. I don't think you've got to sell it more.
Yeah, you do have like cameos from Daffy Duck, Bugs Bunny, and like those big characters. Also, every single Looney Tunes character is voiced by Eric Bauza, who's a great voice actor. But I do feel like you should have gotten more people. Like there are still some people who voice those actors, and you could have gotten them back. Like Bugs Bunny really doesn't sound like Bugs Bunny enough for me, I'll be very honest.
Okay.
Most of them he does a decent job at. And Wile E. Coyote doesn't really speak much. Although he is voiced sometimes in the earlier shorts, in the Merry Melody shorts, and his voice is very fun. Like it's a very like evil, like a high elitist kind of accent. It is very fun. He has. It's very seldom used, but yeah, it's mainly him suing Acme, also trying to get back at the Roadrunner. It's a David versus Goliath story. It is very fun. It does build up. Will Forte is really good. Lana Condor is very good in it as well, who's like this young niece character who's like, no, we can do it. Like we can like battle Acme.
Mm-hmm.
John Cena is again proving that he is probably one of the best actors from the wrestling world to have joined. He keeps being funny. He has charisma. He can genuinely act. It's really good. And like PJ Byrne, again, he was in last week when we talked about End of Oak Street as this weird guy that you love to hate. He's back as this weird guy you love to hate.
Yeah. I know. As Bill Pelicano, I think he's got that character down.
He's got that asshole so down so well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think at the end, like, I don't know if I've said anything mostly about the film, but I do think like it's not the best film. It's not the funniest film. It's still not Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which will probably be like the pinnacle of these types of films of a live action animated like hybrid.
Oh, definitely. I don't think you can get any better than that because that just blew everything out of proportion in the best way possible.
100%. Like I can talk about the film for hours and but it is very much in the spirit of it. It's very much in the spirit of a film I know you've watched with me, which is Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers, the animated one that came out in 2020, which is also a similar thing. It is very much in that vein of like knowing these characters, happy to make fun with these characters and fun of these characters. And yeah, like it genuinely felt like a hug to my older self and my contemporary self, like this person who's watched these shorts growing up and still love them so much, but also whose politics are very much like adapted in that
aligned
way.
with that. Yeah,
it felt very much that, and that was really, really nice. And even at the end, it has this like end message in the credits, which is like, thank you for everyone who posted, held up signs, and pushed for this film to be released. This film exists because of you, something along those lines. And that was really heartwarming as well.
That's so nice. That's so kind, and like it acknowledges that it has these, it exists. You're watching it because of these people. It's giving them their due credit.
Exactly because art exists to be out there. No one makes art for people not to see.
Yeah.
Like, it is a tragedy that art can be a tax write-off. It is, especially in a field where like how people viewing your work is how you succeed.
Yeah.
So maybe one day that Batgirl movie also comes out, even if it's not good. But
it would be really honestly, funny if after releasing this movie, someone was inspired to take Warner Brothers and Paramount to court.
Well, technically, I think the merger still hasn't gone through within like European or UK courts. And there's a chance, and David Ellis is like, oh, I'm just going to pull out of Los Angeles or the US if this merger doesn't go through. And I'm like, do it. I don't give a shit. I hope you.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Anyways, I really enjoyed this, and I would really urge people to see it because I think it is such a fuck you to Warner Brothers if this film really succeeds and becomes really, really good. Like, if this film really succeeds, it would make me so, so happy and be such a fuck you to Warner Brothers.
Fair. Speaking of messages at the end of movies, the movie I watched started with a message at the beginning of the movie.
Yes.
So I watched Tony, directed by Matt Johnson.
Sorry. One roll hot, one catch fries, 2 sets, full. You know I can cook too. Excuse me?
Kid says he's a cook, chef.
Yeah, wonderful. I'm not a cook. I'm a writer. I said I could.
It's Anthony Bourdain's biopic. And you start...
Amazing. So speaking of a film about real background events that happened, which had a seismic effect.
Exactly. And so the film starts with a quote by Anthony Bourdain himself, which is, "I was, to be frank, a spoiled, miserable, narcissistic, self-destructive and thoughtless young lout and badly in need of a good ass-kicking." And the rest of this film is about how he got that ass-kicking.
Wonderful. Nothing if not self-aware.
Exactly. And so basically that quote comes from his book Kitchen Confidential, which is kind of the book Bourdain wrote about his life before and as he was coming into being this chef and into being Anthony Bourdain as we know him. And that's kind of what this film is itself. This film is set entirely before he ever went to culinary school, when he was still at, university. And basically the plot isn't that complicated. It's basically there's this really narcissistic, imagine that young man that really pisses you off because he talks like he knows everything and he talks like he's the shit and he believes he's God's gift to planet Earth, right? That's basically Tony, right?
Okay.
And he's applying for this writing fellowship, which he, lies about getting to his family and to his to this girl that he's interested in, Nancy Putkowski, who's played by Emilia Jones. And he doesn't get it, obviously, because he's literally, we see the scene where he's talking to the people who are going to give him this fellowship and he's talking out of his ass. I was sitting there because he was talking about literature and he was using all these big and fancy words. And I was like, dude, these mean nothing. And it was just such a if you ever met that person in real life, you would not give up on the opportunity to absolutely tear them apart.
Yeah, I know what you mean. To just be I just want one opportunity to tell you how stupid and irritating you are.
Exactly. And so then Tony's been talking to Nancy, and Nancy mentions that she's going to go to Provincetown, Massachusetts for the summer or whatever. And he doesn't get the fellowship and he's really upset. So he goes there too. And then he kind of gets into trouble at this one bar/food joint, which is run by Chef, who is played by Antonio Banderas, and his team of workers or whatever. And basically they kind of rough him up because he's being a complete asshole and they're not taking it. And then Chef decides to, be nice to him, let him sleep in his house, and not in his house, let him sleep on a hammock on the porch of his house and, have him clean dishes. Basically, in this thing. And then as he's cleaning dishes, he finds out, Tony finds out that he really likes watching how the food is being cooked. And he keeps getting into trouble. He makes friends with the wrong person. Sal, who's played by Leo Woodall, who kind of has this heroin problem, is really violent, etc., etc. And so it is a Bildungsroman, essentially, of how Tony came to be Anthony Bourdain. And we see him go through a lot of shit and enact a lot of shit.
I think this very much sounds to me like Timothée Chalamet's film that
Marty
came out last year.
Supreme?
The thing. Yeah, it sounds like what Marty Supreme was, where a complete shithole keeps putting himself in shit. But you just know this shithole will put his life together and be a very humane and radically empathetic person in some ways and inspire that.
Exactly. Which is why I really enjoyed this film, because it did not shy away from making us hate Tony. A lot of films about narcissistic men really kind of get you to empathize with them, right? Really try to get you to be like, no, but they have such dark depths behind them. They have so much trauma. They have so much this. They have so much that.
Yeah, basically just validate in some way or like justify in some way.
Exactly. This film does none of that. The only thing it tells us is this is a young kid who has no idea what he wants from life and has been spoiled and has been sheltered and needs to get that kicked out of him. Like the quote says at the start. And I think it does a really good job of that. Like, I did not like Tony. Throughout the entire film, I did not like Tony. The only moments I liked him is when he's having a genuine bonding moment with Chef or Antonio Banderas. And kind of towards the end of the film where he starts developing a conscience of his own and is not just taking it on from whoever he likes best. Or, not just doing things impulsively. Like at the end, even when he is doing something for himself, even when he is doing something for purely selfish reasons and is lying about it, he ends up changing his mind, And so I think it does a really good job of, I think what maybe Anthony Bourdain would have wanted himself as well is like,
think so.
You don't want people to see that, people can change or, I think not showing like us Anthony Bourdain as we know Anthony Bourdain was to me like a really, really good move, because it's like, well, yeah, everybody knows who that guy is. Everybody knows he's, like you said, the most radically empathetic person to have existed in a really, really long time on, mainstream television.
Yeah.
But to see what made that, to show that this is what people can be, and you have to
This
to
is
fill
where
in
they
the
come
gaps
from.
yourself. Exactly. You have to fill in the gaps yourself. It's like it's showing you that change is possible. People can change. And people should change. You should not write people off for being, horrible, horrible people. But they are horrible, horrible people. But it is possible to see goodness and kindness in them if it exists. And in Tony's case, it does exist. Because he's a kid. He's literally our age.
Don't tell me things like that. He's our age. That makes me be like, what am I doing with my life?
No. But that's kind of a point of this film, right? I think that's kind of what this film made me realize about myself. Is like, I would hate if I had to be stuck in the image of who I am right now. Of course, I want to grow more. Of course, I want to be more. And I think at the end of the day, what this film kind of tells you is like, you never know what life is going to give you. You never know who you're going to end up being at the end of the day. And you've just kind of got to let life take you where it goes, which was what Anthony Bourdain was all about as well. In his work, in his life later on, he was all about trying new things, trying different things, talking to people, like getting to know people, not making friends, but like, being kind and having a conversation, but also standing by what you believe in, having morals. He refused to have a meal with Donald Trump. He refused to give up on, Palestinian freedom. So
I think when you say so much of this, like immediately I'm like, he in so much of his own work, like he will criticize himself. Like in his documentaries, he's done this where like, I think it was the Haiti one where he was trying to distribute food and there was like a massive, like a lot of like people gathered and there was like a huge, not stampede, but like kind of in that sense. And there's a voiceover where he immediately is like, I messed up. That was not the way to do it. These are not people who were aggressive. These are people who were desperate. And I should have done it in a better way. And these were people who were lacking help. And that's why they were this desperate. It is such an incredible sense to put in that moment where you could have clearly taken the spotlight to be like, no, do not in any way highlight me. I'm the one to blame. That is just someone who really is always trying to better themselves. And that is
exactly
if like what you describe. It feels like it would be something Anthony Bourdain would be like, yes, depict me as I was, a stupid, like you said, as someone deserving of a good ass kicking.
Exactly. And I think the film does a really good job of showing Chef, his mentor, who I think is meant to be Jose Vettel, his influence
played by
on
Antonio
Tony.
Banderas.
Yeah, played by Antonio Banderas.
Oh, love him. Love him so much.
Exactly, love him so much. His influence on Tony's life and on these little things of like, you have to constantly look back at yourself and think
Yes.
about whether what you did is correct or not, whether it is true to who you are or who you want to be or not. And I think that it does such a good job of that. I did have one problem with the plot before I move on to the acting, which is like it did the classic thing of like a female character is there to just simply
Just be plot
progress the
motivation.
plot, to be plot
Yeah.
motivation, to be character motivation for the guy. And it does that with the character of Nancy. And I just wish they hadn't done that, because it was such a great film otherwise. You just have this girl who just exists to like motivate Tony, and I'm like, I don't think you needed that per se. Sure, you could have had like her be the reason why Tony ended up in Provincetown or something, because he was following her. But there's this moment where, he sees her with this other guy that she's meant to be dating, and he walks away, and that's how he gets into this bar and gets in trouble, etc. And I feel like if they just left her at that point, like we had heard nothing more about her, it would have been fine, rather than to have her littered in throughout the rest of the film, just like, taking pictures of him, like getting to know him, getting to like him, etc., and then find out he was lying, blah 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 blah, having him do all these horrible things because he was trying to get her attention, blah blah blah. I just think we could have done without that. But
fair enough.
It's just disappointing to have that in a film where it's doing such a good job of this guy's story, and then you just have to throw that in. It's like, there was no need for that. But yeah, moving on to like the acting, which I think is the next best thing about this film, is like Dominic Sessa plays, I don't think I mentioned that. Dominic Sessa plays Anthony Bourdain, and I think he does such a good job. I think like from the holdovers, we kind of
absolutely, like genuinely like such a star in that film. Like I watched that film, and like I think that was his debut.
Yes.
He was also in Now You See Me Now You Don't, and like incredible debut performance in that film as well.
Absolutely. And I think I absolutely loved him in that one, and we kind of knew that he would do amazing things. And it's true. He does such a good job of like just embodying the assholery. And I know he's playing like a real person, but it never feels like he's trying to mimic that person. Even in like certain images where, when Nancy's taking pictures of him, and we see this really famous picture, really popular picture of him in like a kitchen, like leaned over with like a apron around his neck. It never feels like he's trying to kind of mimic Anthony Bourdain. He's trying to embody him instead. He's trying to not become him, but kind of tell his story, channel his, yes, exactly, channel him. And I think it works really, really well in this instance, where I don't think I'm ever looking at Dominic Sessa, but I don't ever think I'm looking at Anthony Bourdain instead. I think I'm looking at Tony in this film, which is really good for a biopic.
Yeah, I understand what you mean. Like the character in this moment.
Exactly.
In a sense, yeah.
And I think Antonio Banderas he's just great. I don't think
absolutely.
I don't think I need to say anything more. He's always amazing. He continues being amazing in this. And then there's Leo Woodall as Sal, who is this restaurant worker with Tony, and the kind of guy who gets him into these like kind of violent, maybe like drug using tendencies. He is fantastic. He made me hate him almost instantly. Like Leo Woodall made me hate Sal instantly, and he's kind of like this grimy, gritty, rough character who at first you're kind of like, oh yeah, well, it's fine, this is just who he is, blah blah blah, he's kind of funny, he has no filter and blah 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 blah. But then he starts doing things like taking heroin and kind of being unnecessarily violent, and as Tony kind of sees that this guy maybe isn't
the best. Yeah.
Exactly. Maybe he doesn't have that genuine goodness or kindness in him. We start to see it as well. And Leo Woodall manages that shift really well, where like one moment you're laughing with him and the next moment you are fucking scared of him.
Oh, wow,
and
nice.
I think it's fantastic. Again, Leo Woodall as well is like, he's a bit older than Dominic Sessa, but also I haven't seen him in a lot of things, but he's really kind of made his way into this like as this kind of actor that will do a good job with the character that they're given, with the role that they're given. And so I just think while this film was like plot-wise amazing as well, it was written really, really well. It was written by Matt Johnson, Matthew Miller, Todd Bartels, and Lou Howe. And it was written amazingly, but I think it was also acted amazingly.
I also want to ask two things. Firstly, this is also the cinematography is done by Michael Bauman, who was a cinematographer for One Battle After Another, a film which I think had really good cinematography.
Yes.
Which also makes me interested about the cinematography. And also, like, it is curious that it's directed by Matt Johnson, who made Blackberry, a biopic which I thought was really good. But he's mainly done Nirvana movies, which has like more of a comedic take to it. So I'm interested also in the comedy of the film, if there's exists.
Yeah, no, it exists. It is a fucking hilarious movie. And it's not funny in the kind of like jokes, funny kind of a way.
Dark comedy maybe?
It is dark comedy, but also it's kind of like, it's those situations where you're watching like Tony do these stupid things or say these stupid things, and you cannot help but laugh because of how idiotic and moronic they are.
It's like The Bear, the comedy of The Bear, basically.
Exactly. It really is like the comedy of The Bear. And the cinematography, I think, it didn't stand out to me, but I think it was gorgeous. It was beautifully shot, but it isn't something that I would necessarily be like, oh, this was kind of like something I would want to like mention. I would have a lot to say about, because it was beautiful. I think it was shot on film as well, but I think it managed to like blend in with the setting enough of like this coastal Massachusetts town well enough. And it lingers on Tony in certain instances just enough for you to get like more than a glimpse of emotion, which I think is great. Like, I think films
it's like works in the background subtly, but does it job well.
Exactly. And I think the music also is like, I think it's period accurate. It's done by Jay McCarroll. And I think you can tell Matt Johnson's
also like
influence.
A frequent composer with Matt Johnson.
Yeah. Exactly. You can tell that they work together, and that, you know, they work together on the Nirvana movies and the Nirvana show, because the music kind of really blends really well into the setting, and it blends really well into not just the setting, but also to like the context and the narrative of the film, which I think is a really impressive thing to do. So yeah, I think overall it's a really, really well-made film. You can tell Matt Johnson knows how to do docufictions and like biopics, because that's mainly what he's worked with. And this kind of it hits a mark. I think we should be doing more chef biopics, by the way, than we should be doing music biopics or like singer biopics, because clearly we're doing a better job at those.
The Gordon Ramsay biopic would be so successful. I'm honestly, it could be the first $1 billion chef biopic now that I'm thinking about it.
Exactly. So I genuinely think this is great. I think A24 has made a really big mistake by signing on to do an AI film, because I am so skeptical of them now.
Oh, why? I did not know this.
I don't know if they've signed on to do an AI film, but they've definitely signed a deal with AI something.
Even if it's like something that's different, it's like, do they not know the current political climate they exist in?
Exactly.
Anyway.
I don't know why they would want to do that when they have such good films that they can distribute and, you know, produce and make. They didn't produce this one, they only distributed this one. I'm like, I just wish that they would stick with this kind of stuff. And yeah, I mean, I'm not saying this film is perfect. Like I said, I did have some problems with the characterization, etc. But I overall think this was a great film, and I would love to think that Anthony Bourdain would have also loved this film.
I hope so too. So yeah, those were our thoughts. Thank you for tuning in. This podcast is produced solely by us with the musical assets by Pixabay. If you enjoyed this, please do share it. See you again next time.
Bye-bye.